Okay guys, part 2 video. I'm going to show you the first two groups that have evolved for animals. So we are starting in the invertebrate section. There are several groups we'll go over, but invertebrate means that they do not have a backbone, okay, or a bone to protect their spinal cord. So if we look at this tree here, we're going to start with the first two groups. We're going to look at sponges today and Cnidaria, which are jellyfish, and a few other things. And then we're going to work our way through this tree until we get to vertebrates, which means like our backbone organisms. So you think of like fish, amphibians, reptiles, mammals, and birds. But first we're going to start with sponges. Sponges fall in phylum Porifera, and then this group we have organisms that live in the ocean. And most people don't think of sponges as animals, but they very much are. They are the first animal to evolve. A little bit about them. So they have no tissues. They're basically a group of cells that are working together. And they are going to feed using a style of filter feeding where they pull water through these pores, and they're going to suck this in. And as that water comes in, also microorganisms can come in too, which they will consume, and then waste will be pushed out the top. The water will be pushed out the top. Their body plan itself is considered to be asymmetrical because there's no way to cut these in half and to be equal on both sides. Sponges are very simple, and their skeletal system is made up of two parts. So spicules and spongin. So spicules are a hard structure that helps to keep them upright and maintain their shape, and it's either made of silica or calcium. Can you think of anything in our body that might be made of calcium? Bones. So think about the structure and support that could provide for for the sponges here. The other protein that is found in their body is called spongin, and this is like this squishy structure that provides flexibility. So when the ocean's tide or current moves in the water, it can help give them a little flexibility to withstand that water pressure and movement. Digestion and excretion. Sponges do have to eat other living organisms because they're animals, which means they're going to use these cells called choanocytes. So this is a choanocyte, and at the back end here you'll see that there are flagella. So they're going to spin this flagella like a propeller, and it pulls water into the body of the sponge, and as that moves in, microorganisms, if they run into the side of the wall or stick to anything, will be absorbed and consumed. For excretion, again, the water just moves back out the top once it's been pulled into the sponge and flows back through out to the ocean. We're going to watch a short video on this so that you can see what that would look like from the point of view of like a food item to the sponge. The respiratory system is very simple. They're just going to diffuse oxygen from that water. There is no circulatory system and there's no nervous system. However, sponges are kind of interesting. They have just a group of cells that recognize each other, meaning there's been experiments done where sponges have been like cut up into a whole bunch of tiny pieces, put through a strainer, and then allowed to sit there for a week or so, and those cells will start reconnecting themselves together. That would be like if a human were to basically be blended up, leave the pieces and parts in a pile, and the body would, or the cells would start trying to reform the body of a human. Given enough time, they can put it back together. So that's pretty impressive for sponges. Reproduction-wise, sponges are able to do either sexual or asexual. They prefer to do sexual, though, because that provides them with more genetic diversity. And sponges are considered hermaphrodites, meaning they have both parts, both male and female parts. So if you think about a sponge, they're stuck to the surface of the ocean floor, and they can't move, at least not during their adult part of their life, which means if you're sitting side by side on this group of rocks with a whole bunch of other males, and you're a male, you can't reproduce together if you only have one part. Or vice versa, if it's just a group of females and you're a female, you can't reproduce together. So sponges are going to have both parts. they will produce both egg and sperm. They will release those into the water for external fertilization to help increase their odds of having offspring with other individuals that they're maybe close to. The other form of reproduction is called asexual, and this asexual reproduction is budding. Basically what this means, a part of the sponge can break off, fall to the ground, and start growing as a new separate individual. That'd be like if a human had their arm broke off, the arm could regrow the rest of the body, and then the other body that it originally came from could regrow that arm. So sponges, even though they're very simple, have some very unique characteristics to them that allow them to survive very, very well in the ocean environment. At this time, if you guys can pause and play the sponge video that's loaded on Schoology's website. All right. Next up, we're going to talk about Cnidaria. This will be our last group that we cover for today. Cnidaria is the second animal group to evolve. And within Cnidaria, we have jellyfish, hydras, sea anemones, and coral reef. All of these live in water. Hydras can be found in freshwater, but most of the time we're thinking about these guys, again, seen in the ocean or marine environment. All right, so the body plan for these guys, there's two different styles. If we're looking at the jellyfish, we've got the medusa, which is this kind of umbrella-shaped portion that can swim. If you're looking at the hydra, the sea anemone, or the corals, we call that polyp. And this is a tube-like structure that's attached to the surface of the earth, or surface of the ocean. The symmetry, however, for all of them is considered radial, because I can cut it in any direction and it will still be in half. Cnidaria get their name from cnidocytes, which are the stinging cell. So how many of you have been told that jellyfish sting, right? But it's not really a sting. It's not electric. In fact, what's happening is it's a harpoon-style weapon that can then pump venom into its prey. So jellyfish, most of the time, are going to have microscopic or very, very small fish that they feed on. They don't actually intend to sting humans or other organisms. It's just an accident. These harpoon guns are triggered by touch. They can't see what they're targeting. They can't control it. It's just simply based on touch. So jellyfish, sea anemones, and hydras have these stinging cells called cnidocytes that when touched are triggered and they pump venom into their prey. Now you may think, why would they need venom if they're just going after microscopic organisms? But think, if they get a small fish, that fish can try swimming away, especially if it's just been stabbed by something. So normally what we see happen is that jellyfish are going to pump a toxin into that organism to paralyze that prey so that it can't swim away and do any damage to the jellyfish itself. For the skeletal system, Cnidaria have hydrostatic, meaning water pressure is what they use to maintain their shape. Without that water, they're going to turn into a blob. All right, digestion. For the first time, we see a gastrovascular cavity evolve. We're going to watch a video here in just a little bit over a sea anemone that is eating a fish, and it pulls it into this one cavity system. It's going to break it down, and then it excretes or forces that food and waste out that same opening. So Cnidaria have a gastrovascular digestive system. For respiration, they still are just going to use diffusion by pulling in that oxygen from the water. There's no circulatory system, and there's what we consider a very simple nervous system. And this has to do with those triggering cells. So Cnidaria have those stinging cells on their tentacles, and it's kind of a nerve net or a way to recognize touch. But again, they can't see what they're triggering against. Reproduction for Cnidaria, you've got asexual, which means if they break off and fall to the ground, then they can regrow. This is typically seen in our polyps, so they will do this if they have to, but again, they don't prefer to. So think about with like our coral reefs. if you have a hurricane come in and do damage and it breaks off tiny pieces, if those pieces get carried to a new location, it can start growing new coral reefs or hydras or sea anemones right there in a new location. Jellyfish, however, have a bit more of a complex lifestyle as far as reproduction goes. They're going to do sexual reproduction, and jellyfish are actually going to do this in what we call a swarm or a smack. A massive amount of jellyfish will get together, hundreds or thousands of them, and they will all release their eggs or their sperm in hopes to increase their likelihood of a baby forming, which will then settle to the ground, start growing for a little bit, and then once it's mature enough, the jellyfish will kind of detach and swim away. But typically we see these, if you guys have ever heard of beaches being shut down because of jellyfish, this is typically what's happening. You've got swarms of jellyfish, hundreds of thousands, coming together to breed or mate or reproduce, and then they will kind of go about their life. And at this time, if you guys can play the Cnidaria video that's pulled up on the board, that is the end of your notes, but please wait until the video is done to do anything pickup-wise.